The first person that I'm bringing to the stage is my sister from another mother. When I tell y'all that she bad, when I say bad, I mean bad meaning bad. Dr. Estrella Bruce, if you don't know her, I promise you, you will be following her, and you probably will be one of her clients after we talk today. We're going to talk about financial trauma, that part, and how it helps you and how it affects you make the decisions that you make every day. So if y'all get on your feet and help me bring to the stage, this is my girl, Dr. Estrella Bruce. Let me tell you something. She's bad, and when I say bad, this one here is funny. She's funny, right? So when I called and I said, Dr. Bruce, what's the walkout music you want? She said, oh. Can I tell her what you said at first? Oh, your husband's on the front row. So Dr. Bruce says, I-N-D-I-N. I was like, what? The independent Webby. She was like, no, that's E. That's E. I got to be Dr. Bruce in front of your people. I can't. So we did Pharrell. So, Dr. Bruce, how are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Listen,
Brother
man,
Tommy.
I'm excited that you're here. Tell the people what you do, first of all, before we get started.
Yes, so first, I'm very, very honored to be here. Thank you again for even wanting me to talk about a subject that is very near and dear to my heart, but I am a therapist, professional therapist, mental health, and I've been doing it now, I had to calculate, for almost 20 years, and so I help individuals, specifically more so women, but anybody that's been dealing with any type of trauma, depression, anxiety, major losses in life, help individuals to understand the importance of self-care as well. So just a little bit about me. I'm also a wife and a mom, so that's a little bit about who I am.
Okay. So Dr. Bruce, first of all, what is trauma, period? What is trauma?
That's a good question. I wanted to start with that. So trauma is anything that is distressing that happens to us that impacts us psychologically, meaning mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, financially, socially. And one thing about trauma is not something that happens to us, it's something that happens within us. Because it impacts the way that we view life, ourself, our reality, our boundaries, like it impacts us in such a way. And one thing I like to really emphasize about trauma is that it's anything that's distressing, but that happens to us that's outside of our normal range and usual ability to cope with stress. So when I say outside of the normal range, I like to give an example of what's usually within a normal range, right? So you guys have probably fought traffic on the way here, right? So that's stressful, but it's something that you can manage. Okay. With time management, you leave on time, and then perhaps on the way here, you listen to soothing music. But trauma is something outside of that normal range, meaning that a lot of times in life, we're not necessarily prepared to deal with something that we're not expected to deal with. So it's unexpected, and we usually need more tools to deal with something very traumatic.
Okay. So when you talk about finances, I've seen people, being a mortgage banker, that come into my office, and I've noticed, or I think that they've dealt with financial trauma, and it's either one or two ways. Either they spend everything that they make and save nothing because they didn't have anything growing up, or they save everything because they're very fearful of returning back to that. Are either one of those healthy?
No, they're two extremes, and they're actually behaviors or symptoms of financial trauma, because we know what trauma is, but financial trauma is acute or kind of long-term financial instability. And the way that that shows up is either, as you mentioned, underspending or overspending, right? So at the core of it, there's this fear and anxiety that you can have a lot of money in a bank, but because now I have to work harder, it keeps me up at night. So now that anxiety is what's keeping me up. but there's no evidence that I'm going to lose it. But the experience of any type of financial impacts, it says that I have to work hard so that I don't lose it, or saving, or becoming more frugal, or underspending. Even when there's a need for something, right? You don't spend out of the need of, I need to hold on to it. So it's almost like a scarcity mindset. I have to hold on to it. I can't let it go. You become risk aversion, right? You don't want to take any risk because out of fear of losing that.
Man, it's very funny that you say that, because the whole reason that I called you to have you come speak on this subject is I was having lunch with a multi-million-dollar friend of mine. And she said that. She said, Tommy, the reason that I work so hard now is because the fear of losing it. And I said, but how can that be? You're debt-free. Your business cash flows $300,000 a month, passive income. Your total overall debt is less than $40,000 a month. I mean, that's $260,000 a month of net income. How could you ever think you would go back to what you came from?
Right. So a lot of that comes from childhood traumas and experiences with finances. When you think about poverty, or even a major change in a child's life, let's just say divorce, their lifestyle changes, or they have to move away and be in a different community or neighborhood, and they're not used to certain lifestyles, so to speak, right? So it's created lack. So that poverty, or even major life changes, it impacts them from the childhood experiences. So it causes them to feel that there is a lack. And even my husband and I, we were talking about this, like with Will Smith. He said the reason why he works so hard is because he doesn't want to experience any type of poverty or fears of loss. And so those are major indicators that in order for you to experience the joys of that wealth, you have to deal with the emotion behind it, the root causes that's causing you to feel that fear in the first place.
Let me ask you this. How does financial trauma play into your overall mental health makeup?
In a major way. As I said, anxiety is one of them, depression. I mean, I've had friends that's gone through financial experiences. It even changes your appearance, loss of appetite. You know, you see people that are not well, like physically, they don't look well. It's because they're in a state of worry consistently. When I talk about trauma, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, so even the thought of finances can cause them to feel tense, you know, almost like a fight or flight experience in experiencing that financial trauma. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so now that we've identified what this is, the anxiousness, the depression, the sleepless nights, the depression, all that kind of stuff, what are some steps, if you've uncovered this, or you think either you may be dealing with it or a loved one, that they can do to start healing from this?
That's a good question. One is to seek professional help. Okay. Professional help is important because at the core of it is a trauma. Financial trauma is a type of trauma, right? And so to deal with the trauma behind it is to give yourself the space to process it from someone who is trained in the area of trauma recovery, because it's not just about the money aspect, but it is about the mental and emotional impacts, because it impacts your financial decisions. So being able to seek professional help is one. Also, always talk about, when you think about from a physical standpoint, if something was going on with your heart, you go to a specialist, right? You go see a cardiologist. So when it comes to financial trauma, even seeking financial advisor, like someone who is also trained in the area, it's almost like a holistic approach to healing and recovery. So you have the emotional aspect of it, you have the financial aspect of it, and then a major part of it too is learning to give yourself grace, right? Because financial trauma also affects us in a space of shame. We feel shameful that these experiences have happened to us. It may not even be our fault. Right, we may have experienced some financial abuse. So you think about abuse in that aspect, many people take on the responsibility, oh, I should have done something differently, or oh, it's my fault. It's not. So being able to address the shame behind it and to say that, hey, it's more common than you think, the embarrassment behind it. So taking those steps, I think, would definitely help in the right direction.
You know, it's funny you talk about shame because I spend a lot of time talking to clients that are in the process of their homes going into foreclosure. And I see a lot of times where the 5 stages of grief come in. And before I really started talking to you and some other people in this mental health space, I've always associated grief with death.
Right.
But it's not really, it's loss.
Absolutely.
And so I can't tell you the countless distressed sellers that I talk to that they talk about the shame.
Yeah.
And I should have known better.
Right.
I shouldn't have bought this house. I knew that I couldn't afford it. I shouldn't have depended on him, or I shouldn't have depended on her. And one of the things that we teach at Wealth Through Real Estate is when you're talking to those clients is recognizing which stage of the 5 stages of grief they're in.
That's good.
And help them move through the process.
Right.
And the first thing that we do is create an environment where they feel safe.
That's major. Safety is really, really key when you're talking about that because, again, it's instability, it's unexpected, and it's hurtful, it's damaging. So you do have to create that space of safety to be able to have that person to start that process of healing. So I think that's a really great place to start.
So what would you say to the person that says, I don't have financial trauma. I didn't grow up in a house of lack. I'm okay. But my spouse, they're always running around. Their hair is always on fire. It's always, the ACH hits our account on Friday and their account is 0 by Saturday because they spend everything because they feel as though they're trying to catch up for something that they lost. And it's killing our relationship.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Wow. Well, first thing that I would say to the individual, I mean, as you can see, financial trauma, even if it doesn't impact you directly, it can impact you indirectly.
Correct.
So being able to see someone actually go through the struggles behind that, I mean, the first place I would start is to see if both couples would even be open to therapy in the first place. But the main thing is for the individual whose hair is on fire, they need to acknowledge that there is a problem. Otherwise, it's going to be a challenge for them to receive any type of help. But the person that's experiencing, I would say, the indirect trauma, I mean, if it's impacting them in such a way, it's okay for them to seek the support from a mental health perspective as well.
Wow. Would you agree that people that are anxious, that live their lives in a posture of a lot of anxiety, a lot of times that the stuff that they're worried about never really happens?
Right.
Except for up here.
Absolutely. That is, I mean, that's what anxiety is a lot of times. It's focusing on the things that hasn't happened. So here's what I do. One of the approaches to therapy that I use a lot is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, is being able to change their thought process to help them to make better decisions. And the way that you do that is to address your belief systems about money. Right? Because one thing that trauma does, as I said, is not something that happens to you, it's something that happens within you. So what we do is create trauma scripts. I'm never going to be good with money. I'm never going to have money. All those things can truly impact the way that we live our lives with money, right? So it hasn't happened yet, no, but you're creating scenarios that, I mean, I call it a dragon. Dragons are huge, fire-breathing, but they're imaginary. So one of the things that I tell them is focus on the evidence. What is actually happening? You need to stop and kind of ground yourself and say, okay, I have fears and the what ifs, but wait a minute, is this actually happening?
That's good.
Just that alone would say, you know what, it's not. And it kind of calms the person because it brings them back to a place of safety and security. So that is like one major thing that I would like implement already from a practical standpoint. Hey, is this happening right now? No. So let me think about what is actually happening.
So basically, let's deal with the facts and not the feelings.
Absolutely.
So the facts say that we're paying all of our bills. The facts say that we have a great job, that we have a very robust career. The facts say, right, that me and my spouse are on the same page as far as saving and spending.
Right.
But the fear or the feeling is one day all of this could be taken away.
Right.
That's a feeling.
Right.
That's something that's not real.
Right. Well, the feeling is real, right?
Okay.
But you have to address the feeling. And again, remember, financial trauma is prolonged sense of like financial instability, right? So there's a feeling that I'm going to be financially unstable. So the fear is real, but I have to address how I feel through, like you said, through evidence. So it's not ignoring the feeling. You know, you're not just trying to, you have a cut, you just throw a Band-Aid on it, but you don't actually clean the infection. It's going to make the wound worse. You're just covering it up. You have to go in and address what is actually causing you to feel that way in the first place, and then continue to focus on the evidence behind that.
I love that. I love that. What do you guys think? Give her a hand. So I want to take a couple of questions from the audience for Dr. Bruce. I want to hear something, and you can be as transparent or as generic as you need to be, to ask a question to Dr. Bruce while we have her this morning. Are there any questions? Okay, hold on. Right here, Monica. And if the person that's after Zay has a question, if you would go ahead and stand. The next person after Zay. Go ahead, Zay.
Yes, hi. Thank
Hi.
you for being here. My
Yes.
question is, could you explain and elaborate what is financial abuse in a relationship?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So financial abuse is when a person uses their power or authority to abuse the individual in a relationship. So you talk about like IPV, which is intimate partner violence. A lot of people are like asking a woman, why isn't she leaving? Why isn't she leaving? A lot of times it's because of the individual has created an environment or has prevented them from working, so they can't support themselves. So it's financial dependency. And so they're being abused financially, not just from an emotional standpoint, but if they can't spend money on necessities or even just be able to go and get what they need at any time, and someone is abusing their power to control them in that situation. Even elderly individuals, right? They've experienced a lot of financial abuse because they may not have the cognitive abilities to really manage their own finances. So, I mean, if you think about celebrities as well, they've experienced financial abuse, right? They put their hands into somebody who's supposed to be managing their money. Yeah. They're actually stealing it. So there are so many different types of financial abuse, but those are some examples.
Hi, my statement is moving forward from a trauma, right, of losses. How do you move forward and tell yourself you deserve it instead of staying in that space? That's
good. It requires work, okay? It's not something that anytime I have a client that comes and they want to experience trauma recovery, I tell them right away, I'm not a magician, I'm not a guru in some way, we have to partner with each other, but the thing is, it takes time to rebuild the mind, right? So we have to rebuild the belief systems behind the traumas and the losses, because trauma impacts us in such a way that it does impact our self-image. We don't think that we're worthy to experience life again or to live life. But to also understand that it's something that may have happened to you, but it doesn't have to define your life.
That's good. Jared?
When working with a romantic partner who's had some financial traumas in times past, how do you work toward creating space when they're damn near triggered by everything, to have that kind of compassionate moment where you can kind of be collaborative and in love to talk through and to delve through those things that are essentially crippling the relationship?
Oh, that's good. One thing keywords you mentioned, creating an environment and space, compassion and love is certainly helpful. You have to be able to create a space of trust, and it's going to take time, right? Anybody that's in recovery, it takes time. If you think about if you having surgery, it takes time for you to like walk, and then days goes by and you start feeling better. But then also asking them, for the sake of the relationship, if this is something that you both are in for the long haul, asking them to be open to going to seek help, right? Because your experiences and compassion and love can certainly open the door for that healing, but in order for them to experience true transformation and change, they have to want to have their mindset transformed and renewed to experience a different version of what finances could be.
Wow. So, Dr. Bruce, for the people that now say, I didn't know that that's what I've been operating in, or I knew it, but I didn't know what it was called, how do they contact you to go deeper and book sessions? How do they do that?
Yeah, so they can go to my website. It's Anumi, D-R-E, so Dr. E looks like Dre, AnumiDRE.com. I have a space where you can go and book a consultation. I always like to talk to my clients. Just offer a 10-minute session. Let me just see if we're a great fit,
Okay.
you know. But yeah, they can go directly there, or even my email, info@AnumiDRE.com.
Okay, so we have people from all over the country, East Coast, West Coast, Mississippi. I met a young lady that drove 6.5 hours last night to be here. So how do those people, do you do online? Do you do Zoom counseling as well?
I do, but for professional counseling, I'm only licensed in the state of Texas.
Gotcha.
But what I can do is, provide them some referrals outside of the state.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. I told y'all she was amazing. She's amazing. Y'all give it up for my good friend,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Estrella Bruce.
Oh,